Hi everybody. Welcome to the overview video for Unit 4. We're making great progress as we move through the course. It's hard to believe that there are only just a few weeks left. In this unit, we're going to focus on the topic of web literacies, and you'll be answering these questions: what is web literacy, why is it important, and who teaches web literacy, and how do they do that? So as you focus on those questions, my goal is that you will get to the end of this unit and be able to define web literacy in the context of the other literacies that we've been learning already, and that you'll identify a model of web literacy, which the model that we're going to emphasize is the Quest model, and you will be able to describe how that model can be applied to teaching. So that's what I'm hoping that we can accomplish together in this unit. Here's our little roadmap. Here's where we've come and where we're heading. So we started with the broad overview of information literacy, concept that applies to getting information from any kind of source, print, digital, video, anything. Just the idea that we're gathering that information, we're evaluating it, and we're using it. Next, we focused on digital literacy. And so we focused on the ways that technology facilitates. I hesitate a little bit because it doesn't always facilitate. Sometimes it's a roadblock if it doesn't work, right? But facilitates us finding information and learning new things. And then in this unit, we're narrowing down our focus now to deal with specifically gathering information from the internet. And so I want to make sure it's clear how those three are really integrally linked together, but they are separate or unique ideas. Sometimes people will use the terms interchangeably, and they'll talk about information literacy when you're reading on the internet, or they'll talk about digital literacy when you're reading on the internet. And that's fine in the context, but I want you to know the differences between these terms. Excuse me. So in this unit, you have 2 chapters that you'll be reading. Sorry about that. 2 chapters that you'll be reading from the textbook. The first one, chapter 7, focuses on evaluating information that you find on the internet, which is a key, especially for students, in being able to get information that's going to be both truthful and useful. And that's a challenge for children to figure out what's good information when it comes to reading online. And then in chapter 8, you'll be reading about synthesizing, or how do you find that, not only find it, but how do you pick out what's important and sift it down to the kernel of an idea, and then put that idea into your own words. And we know that students struggle with doing that. So one of the connections I want to point out to you is in one of our past units, we looked at different models of information literacy. We looked at Eisenberg's Big Six. We looked at Carol Kolthua's model of information literacy. And there are several other models out there that you posted on our Padlet assignment. So what I want to point out here is that while those models are all good and they're all useful, they really focus on the process of getting and evaluating information. What I want us to delve into now as we narrow down our focus is to also think about how do we apply what we know about reading comprehension to getting that information. So those other information models, they are information gathering models. The model we're going to focus on, the Quest model, the model that you're reading about in the book, takes an information gathering model and overlays a reading comprehension model, which to me, those 2 things are integral. You cannot pull those out. You can't talk about gathering information without also talking about, well, how do you understand what you're gathering? That's what chapter 8 does. It brings in those reading strategies that you typically teach children with print reading. It brings those in and weaves them into the searching for information. And that's why I think coming to information literacy with a reading background gives your students a richer experience. Also in this unit, you're going to be doing some viewing. And I know this looks like a long list of things to view, so let me just put your mind at ease. You don't have to look at everything in-depthly on this list, but there's a lot of good stuff out there. So I would encourage you to start with what is the internet. I think that's a key foundational thing for you to view on this list. And then the other things, I would encourage you to take at least a browsing look at everything on this list. If you see something that looks interesting to you and you want to dig deeper, then definitely spend more time. If you want to know more about searching on Google, especially for your own knowledge or to teach to students, the Google tools on this list are great resources. There are several short tutorials, 3 or 4 minutes, that will give you, in a short amount of time, some really useful tips to make your Google searching more effective, and definitely things that will help students in that area. Kathy Schrock is an amazing educator, and she's put together a list of resources. So when you go to her site, you'll see links to other things. And some of those things might be useful to you in the other assignments that you're doing in our class or in your own teaching. So definitely check those out. And you can't miss the bogus websites. That is a hilarious site, but because it gives you links to fake websites that are great teaching tools to use with children. One of my favorite fake websites is dogisland.com. If you haven't been there before, go visit it. It looks like a really credible website, but if you dig deeper, you'll see it's totally fake. And so those are great tools to use when you're teaching children about evaluating the quality of websites. So like I said, you don't have to look at all the bogus websites, but find a couple and check them out and see if there's something that's useful for you. Also in this unit, you're going to be responding to your reading and viewing like you've done in your past units. This time, I want you to make your response a list of the top 5 ideas that come to you as you're reading and viewing, and an explanation statement for each of those. So let me give you an example of what I mean. One of your top 5 might go something like this. I think it's important that students, something. And that idea, you fill in the blank, comes from what you've been reading or viewing. And then to that idea, you add 2 to 4 sentences explaining why that idea is important to you. And then you'll have 5 of those. One sentence giving, or a statement giving your idea of what's important, and then an explanation of 2 or 3, 4 sentences of why that's important equals 1. And you're going to do 5 of those. And you'll post that on the discussion board, and you'll respond to each other as we've done in the past. The next activity gives you a chance to create something that could be used with students. Now, if you're in kindergarten, this gets to be a stretch, so your activity will definitely take lots of modeling and explaining. And if it helps you to think of an activity that's for a little older student than kindergarten, that's certainly appropriate. So you'll see the instructions. You're actually going to design a search kind of activity using alternative search engines. So you're going to stay away from Bing and Google, which I know are really popular. And remember, in Chapter 6, there was a list of alternative search engines. Some of those specifically for children, some could be also used by adults. And you're not limited to just ones for children, but I want you to use something else besides the ones that we always use, and you'll do that in this activity. And then your part 3 of your inquiry project is coming up due. Now notice this due date is a little bit out of the ordinary from our regular due dates. Usually everything's due Sunday night at midnight, but Sunday is July 5th, and that's a holiday weekend, and it's terrible to have a big project like this due on a holiday weekend. So I pushed this due date back a little bit. I hope this doesn't mess anybody up with our routine and our schedule. I hope that it all works out, that people can still get this finished on July 8th. So you see here the little roadmap of where we are. You've done your question, you've done your references, now you're writing your project. And I've provided some direction for doing that in the assignment description. So that should be submitted July 8th. Notice the other 2 assignments, the summary and the search engine activity, Those are still due Sunday, July 5th. They are, I would call, smaller assignments, and I realize still that that is the holiday weekend. Hopefully you'll be able to finish those before the holiday weekend, but if you don't, you have your homework passes, and that's definitely, remember, no questions asked on the homework pass. Any reason, the 4th of July, that's a great reason to use a homework pass if that's when you need it. All right, that wraps up our overview for this unit. As always, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask.